Welcome again to our weekly COVID-19 update. I'm your county manager here in Davie County, John Eller, joined by Robin West, our assistant county manager and CFO today. We appreciate you tuning in again this week with a great lineup as usual. As we continue to give you our weekly updates to try to keep you informed, we try every week not to duplicate what we've talked about weeks before. We're trying to give you the most up-to-date information while also giving you some good news in the community right now. During things that are hard for us all to deal with, we want to remember the bright spots. So we'll do that again today as we start. But again, we have a great lineup for you, and we're going to dive right into that. But on behalf of the Board of County Commissioners and also our county staff here in Davie County, we just want to thank all of our churches, nonprofits, businesses, volunteers, just everybody pulling together to do their part to help all of us get through the times that we find ourselves in. So just can't thank our community enough. So on behalf of all of us, thank you for what you do each and every day here in Davie County to help meet the needs, but also serve those who are in need. So thanks to all of those people who contribute to that end. So we're going to jump right in. Today we have, as I said, a great lineup for you, but our first speaker today is Lori Sluter-Smith. Ms. Smith is here with us to talk about what the Davie High Hunger Fighters are doing, and which is a lot. And we're just pleased that she's with us today to share her experience and what many volunteers are coming together to try to achieve here in Davie County. Ms. Smith?
Great. Thank you, John. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate this time and opportunity to talk about Hunger Fighters and what we've been doing the past several weeks during this pandemic. For those of you who are not familiar with the Davie High Hunger Fighters, I want to give a little background history on the program. Davie High Hunger Fighters was established in 2011 by Davie High teachers. They noticed that students were coming to school during exams, but they did not have exams. They were coming to school to get something to eat. So Hunger Fighters was created to help provide food and meals for these students. But because of the confidentiality and the privacy issues, during that time, the teachers were actually delivering food to students' homes. They've been doing that for several years. As we transitioned from the old school to the new high school, and with some teacher turnover, we weren't sure what the future of the program was going to hold. But after meeting with Mr. Nicholson in the fall of 2017, we walked through the new school. We were able to find a perfect location for a food pantry. So we currently have a large food pantry located inside our high school. This past year, we've actually recently added a blessing box that's located in student services that's filled with individual snacks, protein bars, drinks, even personal hygiene items where students can access it, but it's also somewhat discreet so others, their peers, can't see. Currently at the high school, we're serving about 50 students and their families weekly. And then also during large food breaks, long school breaks, we're providing food boxes for their entire family, meaning a spring break or Christmas break, those type of breaks. We're providing food for the entire family. On March 14th, when Governor did the executive order for schools to be closed, we immediately began discussions and ideas on how we're going to continue to feed our students. With our schools and local churches being closed and church groups were no longer able to provide and pack food bags for our schools. So Davie High Hunger Fighters has now become the centralized unit, basically the food supplier for all the schools throughout the county. So we've gone from feeding about 50 students' families weekly to approximately 400 families, which is about 700 students throughout the county. We've had an amazing outpouring of support and donations. Just in the past 6 weeks, we have had over 100 individual donations in the form of cash, check, PayPal donations, or food donations. We've raised $4,300 in individual donations and have been fortunate to receive $33,000 in community donations and grants. I want to highlight a couple of those would be Davie Community Foundation, East Davie Civic Club, Hillsdale Church, First Baptist Church of Moxville, Green Meadows Baptist, several have reached out and provided financial donations, which has been a huge blessing to us. With those funds, we were able to purchase food. In reference to some of these pictures, the picture on the left is a large order we placed from Lowe's Foods here in Advance recently, and that food goes back to the high school to be sorted by staff. We're trying to use our TAs, teacher assistants, to help us facilitate this. They are sorting the food by schools throughout the county. So each school has a supply of food, and the teachers or counselors are coming from each school to the high school on Mondays to pick up their food to take back to be sorted for their students. That's going out on Wednesdays. Families can come pick up their box of food. The picture in the middle actually is myself, Jimmy Welch, who is the administrator for Davie High Hunger Fighters. He's a teacher and a coach at Davie High School. And then Nathan Hampton is with us. He is actually dating my daughter, so by default, he gets to come help us pick up food from the food bank. He's been a big help and a big during this process. The picture on the right is from one night we were passing out Chick-fil-A sandwiches to one of our schools. We have had a opportunity to partner with Chick-fil-A in Clemens. The owner, David Moore, has been a very big supporter of Davie County schools and the Davie County community. He's actually a Davie County resident. And we have been able to provide, as of yesterday, we have provided 2,400 free Chick-fil-A sandwiches to our students to be passed. They were passed out at each school. So it's just been a great opportunity and a great program to be able to do that, working with David Moore at Chick-fil-A in Clemens. I think it's been well received. We've had several families say their kids have never had a Chick-fil-A sandwich before. So it's just been a big blessing. So that's kind of what we've done the past several weeks. I appreciate you allowing me to speak, and thanks for having me on this call.
Lori, thanks for stepping up in a time of need to help so many children and families. We appreciate the work that you and your team of volunteers are doing there to meet the need before the COVID-19 crisis hit us, and remaining and even enhancing even since. So we appreciate all the work that people like you in this county do, and that's why we want to continue to highlight those efforts every chance we can get. So thank you for your time, and thank you for what all of you are doing.
Thank you.
Okay, now we'll transition into our next speaker today, who is also someone that is here with us every single week, and our great superintendent, Jeff Wallace, to continue to tell us what our schools are doing in the midst of COVID-19, given the recent announcement by the governor, but also the continued efforts to feed families as well. So, Mr. Wallace, we'll turn it over to you.
All right. Good afternoon, Mr. Eller and guests and community. Thank you for this opportunity again. And I'd like to echo what John said about Lori. Lori Smith is an avid member or helper or worker, a mover and a shaker is what I like to call her, with a great heart, and what she's done to the organization and things that's happened doesn't just happen. It takes people like Jimmy Welch and some others, and particularly Lori Smith in this case, to provide meals and to help people in need. And as mentioned, the family that said that they did first time her children had ever received a Chick-fil-A sandwich. You hope to plant seeds of love and care for people. And so I want to commend Lori and many others that's helped out with the Davie High Hunger Fighters. A great program. Following up too on what John mentioned there about the governor's decision to close schools for the remainder of the school year. We have been obviously preparing to return and preparing for schools to be closed. Sometimes people get the idea that whether there are no children in school, so what are we doing? Well, I can assure you our staff are putting in hours and hours of work, preparing remote learning, reaching out to our children, doing video conferencing. One of the primary concerns right now when children are not in our building is the social emotional aspect and how the interaction that we have with our children. So we are reaching out in many, many different ways. Superintendents are constantly talking about what this looks like, the impact it's having on their schools, and sharing ideas across the board, which is very helpful for me as a superintendent and for others. And primarily that makes its way to staff, to students and parents. We will continue, as has been mentioned there. John mentioned the directives from the governor for schools to provide childcare, meals to support children, and to continue with remote learning. We are working hard on what would be a graduation ceremony for both the Early College High School and Davie County High School. So that is yet to come, but we are approaching that quickly. So there will be information coming out real soon on what that looks like. There's been a task force put together, a senior task force to help take care of some of our seniors. We had a great ceremony or a celebration, almost a parade yesterday, when our seniors came to Davie County High School and picked up their cap and gown, and there was staff there lining the streets, lining the sidewalks. The students that showed up, their name was called out. They had parents with them, and they were provided a yard sign that Lori Smith helped organize, and which was funded by parents and donations. But if you'll look around the neighborhood, you're going to see some wonderful looking orange signs about in the yards of a Davie County High School senior. And there will be something similar coming for our early college seniors. But again, thank you, Lori, in helping organize that. But the parade was wonderful. We've heard a lot of positives about that. And so again, we'll continue to work with finding ways to meet the needs and reaching out to our seniors. We are, as most of you all know, the General Assembly came back into session yesterday, and there's quite a list of items for them that pertain to schools. One in particular is the school calendar. Davie County Schools, as does other school systems, put their calendars out typically a year in advance. And there is a calendar out there and has been out there since last January for Davie County Schools for the upcoming year, 2021 year. I can almost assure you that calendar is going to change. I am anticipating that we will start school earlier than August 24th. Again, both the House and the Senate has made a proposal, have a bill, the two different bills, and both of those call for an earlier start. So we will get that out just as soon as we get a directive from the General Assembly. The General Assembly and many of the task force that are at the state level and the national level have now moved their focus for schools from crisis to reentry. And there is a state level task force that will be led by two former superintendents in North Carolina. They're deputy superintendents now, and they will work with the Davie the Division of Health and Human Services, the Department of Health and Human Services, CDC, and RTI International to develop a reentry plan. And one thing I want guests to know today is that superintendents, North Carolina superintendents, and particularly this Piedmont region, we will have a voice in those decisions. We were assured that today. So my point to you is that there's national and international organizations working together on a reentry plan for schools, and as part of the phasing in of the reopen our economy and our state that the governor's involved with. So a lot of people working together, but superintendents will have a strong voice in what happens for our schools. So again, just glad to have the opportunity to share with you today, and looking forward to hearing from other guests. And anybody in the community or families, please submit questions to us, or you are welcome to reach out to us, contact us, our website, or call the central office. We'll be glad to try to help. John, again, thank you very much for this opportunity. That concludes my presentation.
Thank you for your leadership, Mr. Wallace. We appreciate all that you and your staff are doing right now. So thank you for those updates.
Yes, sir.
We'll transition now into our Health and Human Services Director, Ms. Suzanne Wright. Suzanne?
Thank you, Mr. Eller. I have three main points today. First, the CDC added several new symptoms to its existing list of COVID-19 symptoms, and I want to share those with everybody today. In addition to the fever, cough, and shortness of breath that we've been talking about for months, the new symptoms include chills, repeated shaking with chills, so not just the shivers, those uncontrollable shakes, muscle pain, headache, sore throat, and new loss of taste or smell. So if you have a cough, shortness of breath, or difficulty breathing, or at least 2 of the following symptoms, which include those: the fever, chills, repeated shaking with chills, muscle pain, headache, sore throat, or you recently noticed an inability to taste or smell, then you could have COVID-19. Again, you don't have to have all these symptoms, but any combination should prompt you to seek direction from your medical provider or health department about testing. My second point is about the recent announcement from the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services. They started posting the names of facilities with ongoing COVID-19 outbreaks this week. So the long-term care facilities, the correctional facilities, all those, you can see a list of those on the NCDHHS website. Along with the facility names, the state will be sharing the number of positive COVID-19 cases and deaths at the facility. And beginning Friday of this week, the state plans to add additional data, which includes a breakdown of the number of positive cases by staff and residents. So they said they're going to start adding those on Tuesdays and Fridays of every week. So by Friday of this week, we should be able to see all that. And finally, Davie County Health Department is collecting specimens for testing among priority populations, and those priority populations were determined by the state. These populations include healthcare workers or first responders who live in or work in Davie County, people who live in or have regular contact with a high-risk setting like long-term care facilities, homeless shelters, or correctional facilities like our detention center, and people at a higher risk of severe illness. And so the health department's been collecting specimens over the past few weeks and will continue to increase testing. But I just want to let everybody know that we are focusing on those priority populations. So if someone's in need, please call 753-6550 if you're in one of those categories just mentioned, or if you have questions about getting tested in general. And those are my updates for today, so thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wright, for all of your staff and what they're doing across the several divisions and departments within Health and Human Services here. We appreciate you very much. All right, we'll transition now to Sheriff Hartman to give us his update. Sheriff?
Good afternoon. There's not anything different from last week, really. We're continuing to function and handle all our calls. I would like to remind folks that the Sheriff's Office is not responsible for determining if you're an essential business. The North Carolina Office of Emergency Management is responsible for that, so you can contact them to determine if you're an essential business. That's really all I have today, and I'll turn it back over to you, Mr. Eller.
Thanks for joining us, Sheriff. We appreciate what you and your team are doing for us as well right now. We'll transition into Mr. Brian Bird, our Director of Emergency Services. Mr. Bird.
Thank you, Mr. Eller. I'm a lot like the sheriff. Not a lot's been changing for us. We've been staying busy. This is day 51 of our response for the Davie County Emergency Operations Center and for our emergency services partner here in the county. Modified processes for our responders remain in place. Our employees self-monitor. They do temperature checks before and after each shift. Our fire and rescue first responders are being more strategically dispatched in order to reduce their exposures, and that way they'll be available when they can make the biggest impact for our citizens. North Carolina Emergency Management has purchased $335 million worth of PPE for our agencies and for our hospitals, but as of today, they've only received 6% of these orders. Even with those difficulties, emergency services and our hospitals, we're pretty well supplied, and we can see our supply chain starting to improve. We're lucky here in Davie County. We have the THPC warehouse here on Bethel Church Road, and we have a National Guard detachment working down there, so they do pretty well at keeping us supplied. In the coming week, we expect to have information sent to us that details some of our opportunities for federal reimbursement related to some of the COVID expenses that we've had, and we'll start working through that process as soon as we're contacted. Lastly, next week's the annual Hurricane Preparedness Week for North Carolina. You can watch our emergency services site. We'll post some information on there that helps us to be prepared for this season. And that's all I have for today, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Bird. Thanks for all your staff and the response you're giving us right now. We really appreciate your leadership. We'll transition now over to our 911 Communications Center. Our director there is Mr. Rodney Pierce. Rodney.
Thank you, Mr. Eller. Just like the others, I don't have too many updates, just some reminders. One thing in particular we are seeing here in the Communications Center is we're seeing several calls regarding traveling and business operations. Again, those questions need to be directed to the North Carolina helplines that are displayed on the screen. Those numbers are the numbers that we'll refer you to. The state is the best one to interpret the governor's executive orders. So again, we're asking that any questions regarding to traveling and business operations be directly toward the state North Carolina or the North Carolina State Helpline. Also, we are still asking our screening questions on medical calls and law enforcement calls to gauge a level of triage before our responders arrive on scene to help them be best prepared for the situation. Lastly, our center is operating similar to other 911 centers throughout the state. The North Carolina 911 Board is closely monitoring conditions, assisting in updates and guidances, and we're in direct communications with our regional 911 Board representative for any assistance that we may need. That's the basic updates I've got from the 911 Center. Thank you, Mr. Eller. I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you, sir. We appreciate what you and your telecommunicators are doing for us. So that'll conclude our weekly update. We're going to end with the slide we always end with. If you have questions or comments, we're looking for themes every week, so feel free to go to this link to get those to us, and we'll continue to look for great things and good things happening in Davie County and people who are volunteering in the midst of this to help those alongside them in need. So we thank all of our guests today, and we'll see you during our next episode. Thank you again.